I'd like to call the City of Wheat Ridge Planning Commission for April 17th, 2014 to order. Can I get a roll call from members, please?
Ann Brinkman, absent. Alan Bucknam.
Present.
Steve Timms.
Here.
Scott Ohm.
Here.
Emery Dorsey. Amanda Weaver.
Here.
Silka Pop.
Here.
Thank you.
The next order on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to make one comment that due to technical difficulties, this broadcast will not be aired live and will be aired at a later date. Thank you. The next order is I'd like a motion to approve the order of the agenda.
I move to approve the order of the agenda.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Call for a vote.
Motion approved, 6-0.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of April 3rd, 2014? Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Call for a vote.
Motion approved, 5-0 with one abstention, Commissioner Timms.
This is the time for any person to speak on any subject not appearing on the agenda. Is there anybody signed up?
There's nobody signed up to speak.
Okay, thank you. We'll close the public forum. The next item is the public hearing. Let's start case number MS14-01, an application filed by MVG Development for approval of a minor subdivision plat with right-of-way dedication for property zone commercial 1, C1, located at the southwest corner of 38th Avenue and Kipling Street, including 10100 West 38th Avenue, 10040 West 38th Avenue, 3795 Kipling Street, and 3725 Kipling Street. Could staff make a presentation, please?
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, Lauren Michalak. I'm a planner with the City of Wheat Ridge Community Development Department, and I will be presenting case number MS1401. I would like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the zoning ordinance, the subdivision regulations, and this digital presentation. The property is within the City of Wheat Ridge. All appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met, and the Planning Commission does have jurisdiction to hear this case tonight. If we could get the lights to go down. Thank you. We'll start here with just an aerial of the property. This is an image from 2012. North is to the top of the screen. The subject property is outlined in blue, sort of that L-shaped property at the southwest corner of Kipling and 38th Avenue. 38th Avenue is at the top. Kipling is the roadway that's shaded in light pink on the right side of the screen. The lighter gray lines that you're seeing are the existing property lines that will be changing, and those building footprints are the existing structures that are also proposed to be demolished as a part of the redevelopment of this whole property. Just a brief word on the existing or previous uses out here. On the bottom, the south side of the site, this white building is the family thrift store. The L-shaped structure was a multi-tenant building. It's largely vacant now, frequently referred to as sort of the Clancy's building. And then we have a smaller retail structure on the hard corner with a coffee shop and hair salon, and then another smaller multi-tenant building just behind that. So 4 structures. The property has never been platted before. Those structures were built several decades ago. The remainder of the property is mostly paved, which is non-conforming in terms of landscaping and some of our current site design and building design standards. This next slide is an excerpt from the zoning map. So it's the same aerial, and those colors overlaid are the different zone districts. The property is zoned Commercial 1, and that is sort of our standard commercial zone district. It allows for a wide range of commercial land uses, retail, service, office. They're typically slightly larger commercial uses that tend to have more of a community-wide or regional draw as opposed to a neighborhood-oriented business. You can tell from sort of the patchwork coloring on this map that there is a variety of different zoning and land uses in the area. So I'll just point some of those out. To the south and west of the site in this greenish ochre and orange color, that's residential 2 and residential 3. That is a neighborhood with single family, 2-family, and a couple of multifamily residences. To the south, just off the screen, but also having frontage on Kipling, is a property zoned restricted commercial. That's a smaller office building. Across Kipling in the gray, that's planned commercial development. That development includes the Discovery Park, which in this image looks to be under construction, but is now fully complete. And then at the hard corner, there's a restaurant. Sort of just wrapping to the north side of 38th, there are 2 gas stations on the northern corners, a vacant lot zoned residential 1. And then this gray color, again, a different planned commercial development that is a dentist office. To the immediate west side of the site is vacant land. This is actually Lena Gulch across Lee Street. The property does have several street frontages, 5 in fact. And as the commission is aware, this is a picture of the zoning map, but tonight we're hearing a subdivision, so there will be no change to the zoning, the classification of C1 or the permitted uses on the property. And we'll touch on that in just a minute, but I want to show you a few photos. We'll do a quick walking tour. One of our spring snow days, but you can still see most of the site. So just starting on Kipling, we're looking south along Kipling towards the thrift store. And then north along Kipling towards 38th Avenue. Those are some of the smaller retail multi-tenant buildings at the hard corner in the background. This is standing on 38th Avenue looking west. So again, that smaller retail building in the foreground, and then the beginning of that larger existing multi-tenant building in the background, the white building. Again, from 38th Avenue looking north, it's a large site, so it's hard to capture in photographs. Most folks are familiar. Again, from 38th Avenue, the existing building that's on there doesn't really engage 38th Avenue at all. A lot of the activity is interior to the site, so we're hopeful that with a redevelopment subsequent to the subdivision, we can engage and have an improved street frontage there on 38th Avenue. And this might be the last one, from 37th Place, then looking southwest into the interior portion of that larger multi-tenant building. So just a quick slide on the context. Tonight we are looking at a subdivision application. The subdivision regulations are Article 4 in Chapter 26 of the Municipal Code, in the Zoning Code. And ultimately, a subdivision is a document that creates a record of land and creates or reconfigures lots, tracts, or parcels typically for the purpose of sale or development. It's also a document that we use to evaluate city right-of-way. You can convey right-of-way to or from the city and private parties. In this case, we are dedicating some right-of-way to the city. It also is an opportunity for us to look at civil documents, so a traffic study, a drainage report. Often the plat doesn't show the proposed development, but we can still assess. We know what the development is, so we look at those documents to create the appropriate easements or right-of-way dedications. A plat does not change the zoning, as I mentioned earlier. It doesn't change the permitted uses, and this document will not show building footprints or site design. Those are separate land use applications. I think I outlined this in the staff report, but this type of redevelopment of this corner typically involves a series of land use applications, and this one's no exception. So the plat typically goes first to prepare and create the lots that will be developed. In this case, we have 2 active site plan applications. Those are reviewed by staff. They're not reviewed at a public hearing. And then the other active application that actually was just approved on Monday night related to financing. So City Council and the Urban Renewal Authority reviewed and approved a redevelopment agreement that included tax increment financing. So that was approved on Monday. And again, that's related to the project, but sort of all separate from what we're looking at tonight. So with that, We'll look at the case this evening. This subdivision plat is a 3-page document, so I'll show you all 3 and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty. This first page is sort of your standard cover page, the vicinity map, the legal description, our standard notes and signature blocks. This property, as I mentioned, has never been platted before, but there are a variety of easements and other encumbrances, and sometimes when you have a property this large, what we do is one sheet to vacate those lot lines and easements and another sheet to create the new lot lines and easements that we need. It just helps, I think, for legibility and for clarity. So this second page is removing those existing lot lines that are not appropriate anymore. And then the third page here is creating those new lot lines. So we've got a graphic portion on the left-hand side and the standard notes, and we'll just zoom into that graphic portion here. So the blue, excuse me. So those blue lines on the screen are showing the boundary of the entire property and those new internal lot lines. The commercial 1 zone district does not have any minimum lot sizes. And so in the absence of that standard, what we typically do is identify sort of if we know who the proposed or potential end users would be and ensure that the lot sizes and shapes are appropriate for those uses. In this case, we do know that the end users for lots 1 and 4 will be Morningstar Senior Living, a nursing home, assisted living, memory care facility, and then Sprouts is a grocer. Each of those lots will have buildings that are about 28,000 square feet in size, so the larger lots. We don't know the end users, the city doesn't know the end users yet for lots 2 and 3, but we anticipate that those would be smaller retail buildings, retail or restaurant. On this same graphic, different highlighting, the red hatched area on the perimeter of the site is showing you the area that's proposed to be dedicated as right-of-way. Whenever we're reviewing a subdivision plat, staff looks at the adjacent streets to see if they meet current city standards or can accommodate the expected impacts. So in this case, again, with 5 street frontages, on Lee Street to the west. It's a local street, but it is substandard in width, just a street that's always kind of been there and has never been the full width. So a plat is the opportunity to request that additional right-of-way that's needed. So in this case, it's a narrow strip on the west side. On 38th Avenue and Kipling, those are both arterial roads in the city, and so they should, under our current standards, have enhanced streetscape. So the right-of-way in this area is going to accommodate detached sidewalk, street trees, and then again, we looked at a traffic study, and so there will be a few public improvements required on those streets, namely a acceleration and deceleration lane along Kipling, to accommodate some of the traffic that we anticipate would be slowing to pull into the property or accelerating as they pull out. And then again on 38th Avenue, additional right-of-way to accommodate those streetscape improvements, and there will be a slight restriping closer to the intersection to accommodate a westbound left turn lane that will allow folks to pull into the property. So again, that red area is the portion that's currently privately owned and will be dedicated to the city as right-of-way. And then the last graphic with shading, this is just looking at easements, which is another component of a subdivision plat. So the sort of brighter pinky purple color are our standard perimeter utility easements. That's where most of the dry utilities tend to go. In the staff report, I described that we may need some modification to these perimeter easements, particularly on lots 2 and 3. In this zone district, we do have a requirement for buildings to go closer to be pushed closer to the property lines, and realistically, there may not be a need for easements in the hard corner up here on 38th and Kipling, and if we can get a building there, then we would prefer to see the easement move potentially to one of the other shared lot lines. So that may be a modification that's made between now and the city council public hearing. The other bluish, wider colored easement, that's for stormwater. We did review a drainage report for the entire property, so accommodating that runoff for all 4 lots. With the proximity of Lena Gulch, a lot of that water will be contained and then discharged into the gulch. So as with most land use applications, we sent this on referral to other city departments and utility districts, as all districts have indicated that they can serve the property. As I mentioned, civil documents, those supporting documents, traffic and drainage have been reviewed and approved by the Public Works Department. Urban Renewal has reviewed this application because the property is within an urban renewal area and they found no conflict with the urban renewal plan. And Kipling is a state highway, so CDOT, the Colorado Department of Transportation, also reviewed the application and provided comments and has no concerns. I should mention that the property has been posted on all 5 street frontages with a yellow public hearing sign, and staff hasn't received any comments, objections, concerns, written or verbally. So with that, I will offer staff's recommendation of approval. Subdivision plats are technical documents, so we're assessing them against the subdivision regulations and whether or not future development could be served. And we are recommending approval because the plat meets the requirements of Article 4 and can be served. As outlined in the staff report, and I just mentioned, staff is recommending a few conditions. One would be to modify those easements as needed. There was a typo that we found on page 3, and then the public improvements that I mentioned along 38th Avenue and Kipling and some interior to the site will be memorialized in a subdivision improvement agreement. That's a document that outlines what the developer's responsibilities are, and those are typically required to be recorded with the subdivision plat. So that would be the 3rd condition. That's the end of my presentation, so I'd be happy to answer any questions. With me tonight, our senior planner, Meredith Reckert from the Community Development Department. Scott Brink is the Director of Public Works, and we also have the applicant, H. McNeish, here to answer questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Mikulak. Let's hear from the commissioners. Commissioner Buckman?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Just a quick question about right-of-way dedications.
Yes.
It looks like you're trying to, on Lee Street, end up with a 30-foot right-of-way from the center line of the street to the curb there on the on the west side of Lot 1. Is that what you're looking? Because it looks like you've got 20 feet already, and you're dedicating another 10.
That's correct. So I think that Lee Street is currently 40 feet in width, and a local street is typically at least 50 feet in width.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to understand the reasoning behind dedicating those, but not on 37th Place or Klein Street. And it looks like Klein and 37th are both measuring 50 feet already.
Exactly. That's
okay.
correct.
All right. That's what I need to know. Thanks.
Commissioner Dorsey?
The easement on Kipling for the curb cuts, is that enough for those curb cuts? Is there going to be a speed-up lane on a right turn to get onto Kipling, like there is, let's say, up here where the veterinary office is?
Sure.
That curb cut is
Sure.
way deep so that you can pull out of that lot there and sort of wait for traffic. Is this curb cut or this easement enough for one of those curb cuts? Or?
It is, yes. So the current right-of-way on Kipling, it extends beyond sort of that curb to curb. So there's already right-of-way back of curb, and then this additional width of right-of-way that's shown along Kipling would be enough to accommodate the lane that you're speaking of, and then also the sidewalk and amenity zone.
Okay,
So it's just the balance of what we need to fit those in.
that was one of my concerns. Okay.
Commissioner Weaver?
I just have a follow-up to that. So is that why on 38th, as you travel east, the right-of-way seems to be smaller and then it gets a little larger? Is that accommodating the turn?
In part, yep. Typically, especially at an intersection like 30th and Kipling, and Scott may be able to weigh in here, but on this, we have a need for additional width to accommodate all the left turning lanes at the intersection, and then in this case, a left turn lane into the site. So when looking at the traffic study, we did not need an additional accel-decel lane along the north side of Lot 1, so it wasn't necessary to request additional right-of-way. Does that sound consistent with the traffic study?
Yes, that's correct. One of the things we'll be doing on Kipling is
redoing the striping out there as you approach the intersection from the west. The lanes, as they're striped right now, don't align exactly with the ones on the other side of the street. So part of the extra dedication there is to give us some extra flexibility to align those a little better, plus provide the room for the streetscape improvements.
Great, great. I just had one other question. So there is room then for sidewalk, curb and sidewalk along 38th?
There will be detached sidewalk and a tree lawn on 38th.
Okay, and this is just one last question. Is 38th the bike route? I realize that there's no dedicated lane, but is it?
I'd have to check. I don't know off the top of my head. The applicant's not responsible for building like a bike lane, if that's,
Yeah.
is that what
No,
you're
I was
asking?
just
It's on our, so in our, the city has a bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And so it's definitely either a bike or ped route, and it's identified to have that detached sidewalk at a minimum, so that's why that's required.
Thanks.
Commissioner Timms?
Just two questions for staff, please. The first one is on the plat between lots 1 and 4. We have this kind of curved line, right, that separates the two. Why is that curved and not straight?
Sure. So it's kind of tough sometimes to envision what this will look like without seeing the site plan, but the primary interior drive for the property will follow the spine of that curved line. In fact, that shared property line will be the center line of that drive. We would like to see the drive pushed as far away from the intersection as possible to minimize conflicts there, but then accommodate the lot sizes that lots 1 and 4 need. The applicant may be able to give a little bit more background on sort of the lot configuration, but that's part of the reason.
That helps, thank you. And the second question is, can you explain for us and for the audience and for those watching, if the public's interested in seeing the site plans, what these buildings are going to look like, where the parking's going to be, where the building's going to be, et cetera, what that process is and how they can potentially take a look at those?
Sure. So any site development or building permits that are for permitted uses are reviewed by staff. And so those are administrative documents. They follow a similar process in that they get reviewed by staff, and all the civil documents get reviewed by staff. They get sent out to the appropriate city departments and utility districts for comments, but they don't go to public hearing. The site plans for lot 1 and 4 are both in process right now, so they're here in the Community Development Department. It's all public record, so anytime during business hours, 8 to 5, we always have a planner on staff, or you can contact me, Lauren Michalak, directly to look at those site plans. I'd be happy to show anybody that's here or viewing what those look like.
Thank you, no further questions.
Commissioner Pop?
My only question is if you could point out on the map or just describe the various access points to the lots, and for instance, if you could access lot 4 from lot 1 in any capacity.
Sure, and I meant to mention this after Commissioner Dorsey's comment. There is a blanket cross-access easement that will cover the entire property. Sometimes you see a plat where there's very defined, here's where the driveway is and here's the shared access space. In this case, all of lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, the businesses, the guests, the visitors, anybody that uses the site has permission to use any portion of the property for access and parking. More specifically, I think I mentioned that there'll be a major interior drive sort of north-south along this curved spine. There'll be 2 curb cuts on Kipling, one with more limited turning movements than the other. Right now, I think on that site there are very wide driveways or curb cuts, extensive curb cuts that creates a really unsafe environment not only for vehicles but anybody trying to walk. So there will, I think, be 5 curb cuts on the entire perimeter of the property in total.
Are there any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Good evening. My name is H. McNeish. I'm with MVG Development. We're at 1509 York Street in Denver, 80206. So I'm thrilled to be here tonight. We're thrilled to be here tonight and thrilled to bring Wheat Ridge this project and appreciate the support we've received to this point from the city. And actually what I want to do also is thank staff for their effort in working with us to bring this project and this subdivision plat for your consideration. They've worked hard from the standpoint of, you see the thoroughness of the presentation tonight. But also I think what's important too is that there's an established schedule if you make your submittal dates to get to these hearings, and they stick to that schedule, and that's refreshing. We're pleased by the recommendation of approval and the findings that our request is supported by the city's zone district regulations and the subdivision regulations. We're committed to resolve the conditions that Lauren defined in the suggested motion of approval. So this is an obvious critical step toward the development of what we know will become and what we expect to become a Sprouts Farmers Market, continuation of the Starbucks, and a 64-unit senior housing project. We're actively marketing the remaining pad that's on 38th. We're excited about the opportunity to become part of the community. Your approval today will give us a significant stride toward reinvigorating this important commercial corner. I can answer further questions as you have them. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Let's start with Commissioner Buckman. No questions? Commissioner Dorsey?
I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Weaver?
I think I missed this. Do we know what's going in the proposed Lot 2 and 3? I just saw the Lot 1 and 4.
That's correct. We have not identified a tenant
Okay,
for Lot 2.
all right.
Commissioner Timms? Commissioner Pop?
No questions.
I will have one question. When you're doing the Lot 2 and 3, is that going to be two separate units, or is it going to be one unit that would house 4 businesses? Or 2 businesses, or whatever? I mean, are you looking for a single building or a tenant that would take part of a single building, or is that going to be,
Yeah, I think I get you. We will do a building on each of those lots.
okay.
The makeup of the unit is still to be determined, whether they will be single tenant occupied or multi-tenant occupied. However, what I can tell you is that given the size of those lots, a typical pad parcel, if you will, is somewhere between 3/4 of an acre and an acre. These are in sort of the half-acre range. So there is some limitation to be able to account for the building and for the appropriate parking.
I have just, one more question. Are you raising all the existing structures on all of the lots?
Yes, the intent is to remove all of the existing structures, all of the existing surface materials, and completely regrade and reposition the entire parcel for the master development.
Thank you for your presentation and answering the questions. I'd now like to open up the citizens forum. Has anybody signed up to speak? Is there anybody out there that hasn't signed up but would like to speak? If you haven't signed up, you can just go to the podium and state your name and address. Sure.
I'm Patricia Oliver. I'm a new resident of Wheat Ridge, and I'm here tonight because I've enjoyed going to a business of 40 years that's on this parcel.
Could you, excuse me, could you also state your address too?
Yes,
Thank you.
7057 West 29th.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm aware that there is a business called Clancy's that I've I've frequented since I moved here last fall. And I'm curious what's going to happen with them. I understand from an article in the newspaper, they signed a 5-year lease last year. I mean, I'm still rather in the dark, and I'm curious if that is going to be addressed at all.
I can try and address that. So the current property owner is, or the property owner that signed the lease with Clancy's is not a party to this application. They've given permission to the applicant, Mr. McNeish, and MVG to submit the subdivision plat. So that's a private. It's okay. So that's a private agreement between Clancy's and the landlord. The city, the Economic Development Department, is trying to work with Clancy's to try and relocate them to keep them in Wheat Ridge because we know they've been here for a while. But that's the city doesn't have a role in negotiating that lease. Sure, and that's why we're trying to keep them in Wheat Ridge.
How could the landlord agree to the sale if they'd allowed Clancy's to sign a 5-year lease?
And I'd be happy to try and answer some of those questions offline, but it's not super relevant to the subdivision, and again, it's not something that the city plays a role in, other than trying to locate them elsewhere if they'd like to. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Come to the podium, please. Just please state your name and your address.
Actually, it's Chad Martin, and it's at 10117 West 37th Place, Lot 1. I'm a representative of Clancy's Irish Pub. And I guess our question was, you know, we've actually been stated in the Denver Post before, talking to Steve Art, and we thought maybe he'd be here this evening because it would be more questions for him. That he had already had us relocated, and so telling our patrons and excuse me, people that were interested on where we're moving, we're talking about the article that was in the Denver Post. So we actually don't have anywhere to move right now. And what we were curious about, the reason that we're here, is that we're not invited to stay, but we're wondering about the Wheat Ridge renewal extending to that far, to where 38th and Kipling is, as far as what the business, if there's a relocation, are we entitled to Wheat Ridge renewal money? As far as if it would be a buyout or relocation funds that we could apply for, because we've kind of been left in the dark with that. We've talked to Steve Art and some of the other council members, and they've advised us to go and get loans, but it's also, it's kind of hard when a business has been in an area for 40 years or more and trying to relocate, essentially starting over. And, it's been pretty hard working with everybody saw pictures of the location. There's not been a whole lot done there. So you're kind of leaving with nothing. And essentially, we've been there for now, myself and my partner, about 4 years. And it almost takes that long for 4 years for you to build a business. And restaurant and bar businesses are very hard to establish and keep running. So I guess we just were wondering what, if anything, we can do to inquire about what the Wheat Ridge Urban Renewal would extend to Clancy's Irish Pub.
Sure. I'll try and take that one again. So Steve Art, as you referenced, and that is the city's economic development manager, and the Urban Renewal Authority is a separate body from the Planning Commission. So it sounds like, while I sympathize completely with the moving, it sounds like you're probably in touch with the right people. I don't know that the Planning Commission, and we're representing.
We were just curious. We just wanted to see what was going to happen, and I know the MVG representative was going to be here, and that's what I think some other people were curious about, because as far as what was going to be used, if there was another Irish pub to be set in this place, I think I would be upset, and some of the community would be upset too. So that's just our regard on that. So there was no invitation extended to us by MVG, and we realized that. So we were just wondering exactly what was going to happen, trying to get exactly what was going to happen, because we really haven't heard anything.
Sure.
You know, the ownership has not really been, the current and not the future ownership has been very vague as to what was going to happen over there. So I thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Hi, I'm Holly Heaton, 10240 West 34th Avenue. No, that's okay. Hopefully I won't break it before I leave tonight. Heaton. Okay. I've got a couple of questions because I didn't know that any of this was going to be happening until a couple of weeks ago, and wanted to know, had there been any other meetings prior where, and please don't misunderstand me, that corner's been an eyesore for quite a while. Had there been other meetings where what was going to happen on this corner had been discussed prior to this? That were public?
There haven't been. A subdivision plat is not a land use action that requires a neighborhood meeting because it's typically the zoning, so that's C1 that's determining the uses. So this is the first public meeting, and the yellow posting signs that are on the property go up 2 weeks beforehand. So 2 weeks ago today, they would have gone up, and then the mailing for a public hearing only goes to somebody within 300 feet of the property. So down at 34th, you may not have been within that radius. I know that some of the site planning documents were shared at the town hall meeting, which took place a couple weeks ago at the rec center. So in some respect, there was some, the site plan was shared then, but it wasn't specific to that. Yeah. So this would be the first official public meeting for this application.
Okay. I guess I've got a couple of questions, and each one is a little bit different. This senior living facility, what type of facility is that going to be?
It's going to be operated by Morningstar, and they will be having assisted living and memory care units.
Okay, so it's not a Section 8.
No, it's
Okay.
a private pay senior living.
Okay, and my understanding is that Clancy's was actually considered a landmark. Does it have any protections because of that, or no?
That's new information to me. I don't know if we have any more historic.
I don't know if that's actually true or not. I'm just
Typically,
asking.
I mean, I think they have a great reputation throughout the metropolitan area as being a cool place that's Irish. Typically, if we have any sort of designation, it's more geared towards the building.
Okay.
And obviously, that building is not historic, so.
No, the building definitely is
Right.
not.
We
Well,
hope not.
maybe, but not in a good sense. Okay. And did you say that we can get copies or find something online where we can see what's going to be going in? And I guess one of my concerns is that if you look around the Denver metro area, part of what makes an area charming is by keeping it quaint. And Wheat Ridge has some quaintness, and some of it has gone away by some of the decisions that have been made. And I'm hoping that you don't end up doing something with 38th west of Kipling and widening that road, because it changes the dynamics. I think that if you look at Highlands and you look at the area over by Crestmore on 3rd and Holly, where they have not done that, in those areas, the property values have increased tremendously in value, and they have not had to widen the roads. And it actually destroys the charm in the neighborhood. So that's one of my concerns, and I'm wanting to know what the plan is there.
I think that's an appropriate concern. The site plans are available. They're not online, but they are available in our office. So the Community Development Department is on the second floor of this building.
Okay.
And you're welcome to either come by anytime or schedule an appointment with one of the planners to look at those. As far as the widening of 38th Avenue, I don't think there's any plans to widen 38th Avenue. The widening right there at the intersection in front of lots 2 and 3 is only to ensure that there's traffic moving efficiently through that intersection so that they don't back up west on 38th. And then we know that Cambridge Park residents are concerned about being able to get in and out of their neighborhood, and if we had queues from Kipling lining up too far, then that could be problematic. So there's no plan to widen that road, especially based on this development. It's not warranted by the traffic study. And then as far as character, I think you'll see if you come in to look at the site plans, there's a lot of landscaping going onto this site that I think will help improve the aesthetic. They're not enormous buildings. The senior living facility will likely be residential looking in nature. So I think you'll be
facilities.
Exactly. Yep.
And how is the additional traffic flow going to be handled?
Our present engineer, do you want to take that question?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
How is the additional traffic flow going to be handled?
There's various traffic improvements that are going to be done outside of the property itself. The acceleration, deceleration lane, extra lane along southbound Kipling will be done. CDOT has reviewed the plans, and that's part of one of their conditions too, as far as because they own and maintain Kipling. 38th Street, we will be reconfiguring, realigning the traffic lanes there to accommodate a left turn lane into the site. And we did have a traffic study done. Basically, the traffic study looked at the Kipling, looked at the turning movements inside and out of the site, and did projections out 10 years, 20 years. Basically, the roadway infrastructure serving the site, 38th and Kipling, can handle it. There is a lot of traffic out there right now, of course, but the traffic this site is going to generate is very minimal, drop in the bucket compared to what's out there now. So no negative impacts to the system itself out there. So that, in addition to the consolidating the curb cuts, channelizing the access a little more, whereas now it's more of a free-for-all out there. There's so many access points, is going to add to the safety as well. So we're confident the development as proposed is going to handle the traffic okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Seeing none, I will close the citizens forum. I would like to entertain a motion.
I make the motion to let me get to the approval of the case number MS 14-01, a request for approval of a 4-lot minor subdivision plat on property zoned commercial 1C1 and located at the southeast corner of West 38th Avenue and Kipling Street for the following reasons. Should I do that? All agencies can provide services to the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. All requirements of Article 4 of the Zoning and Development Code have been met with the following conditions. Corrections regarding utility, drainage, and access easements be provided prior to the public hearing at City Council. A typo on Sheet 3 be corrected. Tract A should be referred to Note 7. The developer enter into a subdivision improvement agreement with required security prior to the recoordination of the subdivision plat.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that with just I think Commissioner Dorsey wanted to allude the southwest corner of 38th and Kipling, so just clarify on that one. That's okay.
Any discussion? Commissioner Weaver?
Yeah. I just want to thank everybody who came tonight. I think it's a really confusing process of how everything happens in this, and I hope that you all will go talk to Lauren. She's a fantastic person as far as understanding, and Meredith, of course, too. I just know that she offered in just understanding how this process of subdivision versus what's going to be built on the property, and answering all of these really good questions, because I just really appreciate that everybody came out tonight to start the conversation about this. And I am sorry that this necessarily isn't quite the forum maybe for the discussion about Clancy's and some real issues. And I do want to acknowledge that Clancy's has been a really, and continues to be a really, really important part of our community. And I hope that conversation can continue on with the positive redevelopment that's happening on this corner. I do want to say, as a person who lives in very close proximity to this intersection, that the replatting is the subdivision, I'm not saying this correctly, the subdivision is really very important because of these right-of-ways and because we have a lot of pedestrian traffic on that particular intersection every day. I drive that intersection every day, and I see kids walking from schools, and the fact that there are so many turn-ins right now, and there aren't any sidewalks. I am pleased to see that there's going to be a lot more organization to this particular parcel by subdividing it. So that's why I'm going to support the subdivision, but I did want to mention and thank everyone for coming tonight, and I would really encourage you to keep the conversation going, and yeah, okay.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
The question was when the next meeting on this application is, and I should mention this, Planning Commission is making a recommendation tonight. City Council will have the final decision, and that will be on Monday, May 12th.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
The meeting on May 12th at City Council will be nearly identical to this. It'll be a public hearing, a staff presentation, an opportunity, again, for applicant or public comment. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'd like to call for a vote.
Motion approved, 6-0.
Thank you, everybody.
Nice.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other items on the agenda?
Is just scheduling the meeting for May 1st is going to be canceled, but we do anticipate having another Planning Commission meeting on mid-May, May 15th.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Is there any other items, or do we want to make a motion for adjourning?
I move to adjourn.
I second.
Call for vote.
Approved, 6-0.